All right, welcome back. We are coming at you with a new episode of Victory Monday, hoping everybody's having a victorious Monday. Today we have guest Derrick Kinney with us. We have the pleasure of talking to him about his life and his career and his brand that he's built. And so I guess to start it off, a good place to start this from is, just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe where you grew up, what your childhood was like, and we'll roll from that.
Sounds great. Well, Trey, Kyran, great to visit with you both. Thanks for having me today. It's a real honor to be with you. I grew up actually born in Washington State. I live in Arlington, Texas right now, but we moved about 6 times before the sixth grade. My dad would get transferred, lose a job, that kind of thing. So this is home for me. So from the sixth grade on, Arlington, Texas is where I have grown up. And for those of you that may not know, that's the home of the Dallas Cowboys, Texas Rangers, a lot of hub of activity in this local Dallas-Fort Worth area. But what brought me to where I am right now, incidentally, was I was in a hotel room in Boston in July of 2019. I go away on a sabbatical every year, and I ask myself 3 questions, just a time to get away and be by myself and really think and pray and journal. And I ask, what can I do to be a better husband? What can I do to be a better father? And what can I do to be a better business owner? And this was an interesting time because I was really wrestling with, did I want to stay as a financial advisor, or did I want to sell that business and launch something else? Well, long story short, as I went through the pros and the cons of both of those ideas, and really what did I want for myself in the future, I decided to sell that week there in Boston. And so went on to begin to write a book and launch a podcast and really just launch an entirely new business around good money. So that brings us to where we are today.
That's awesome. So I think a lot of times people wonder when you're having a conversation with somebody who's in the finance industry, kind of where it started. So what was your first job ever?
Yeah, so very, very first job was sacking groceries at Minyard food stores in Arlington, Texas. And, it was a job I could do while I was in high school. Worked part-time, got paid $3.35 an hour. And it's funny because the last suite where my office was before I sold it was suite 335. And I intentionally picked that suite number to remind me every day of where I came from and where I was going to. And so I didn't really wade into the finance field until after college. I took a job as a software developer for a marketing company, and realized about a year and a half into that job, man, I can either sit in this job kind of rotting away, waiting on someone else to tell me my value based on a bi-yearly evaluation, or I can do what I really feel called to do, and that was to begin investing money for people and launching something and growing. So I got licensed in the evening, worked full time. It took about 6 to 9 months to get to that path, but eventually was able to launch my own financial planning practice.
Sweet. So with the sacking groceries job, were you still in high school or what with that?
Yeah. So I was working part-time while I was in high school. And, back in the day, I was 15 years old, chomping at the bit to get my driver's license. Nowadays, I hear stories about parents still dropping their kids off at college, for goodness sakes. And, back when I was 15, I would find any way, legal or illegal, to get my driver's license, get in the car and go and do stuff. And, I remember, working Fridays, all day Saturdays, Sundays, just because I just enjoyed working. I enjoyed making money. And then later on in life, I would actually connect that, hey, by making money, I could actually do more good with it. But it was just the act of making money, kind of betting on myself and working hard and adding value to people. I just loved it. I really, really loved it.
After then the working part-time with the groceries in high school, did you go to college, or have you always been maybe a little financial in the head and you didn't think maybe college wasn't financially the smartest thing to do? Or if you did go to college, what did you go for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I went to college and went to my local 4-year college here in Arlington, University of Texas at Arlington. And actually, my dad just told me, hey, get your degree. It's a stepping stone for things yet to come. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time. And so I just began to take college classes, but one class I really liked, and it was my communication classes. And it was how to speak and how to talk and how to argue and how to debate and all these things, how to give talks, essentially. And I ended up stretching 4 years into 6 there at the university because I was working almost full time. My parents had since moved away. I was completely independent on my own and just realized, look, if you're going to make something happen here, you got to be the one to do it. And so after I graduated, what I realized was people really don't care about people with a communication degree. Okay. There was like no opportunities. So I went to work making like $27,000 a year for this software company. And I quickly realized, man, this is not going to get me on the goal path that I want. And you know those points in life where you realize you're either at the whim of someone else telling you what you're going to do, or you got to put the chips on the table and bet on yourself. And this was a moment for me where I realized, man, I can either stay stuck in this job or I can begin to bet on myself and say, you know what, I like money. I like to help people with money. And I can learn this thing, even though I didn't learn anything in college about money. I can actually get licensed on my own and begin to build this business. And so that's what motivated me to really do that. So what started off in the grocery store, just being self-motivated, really carried into my early professional life of, hey, let's keep that motivation going and let's see where this thing goes.
That's awesome. So you can tell just by listening to you talk that you're a very polished speaker and you're very outgoing, it seems. And so with that communications in college and just your overall personality, when you did end up, getting into finance and financial advising, how much of your success do you attribute to that, level of communication that you do seem to have? And then how much of it do you contribute to your financial knowledge? And I'm sure it's a mix of the two, but just kind of talk about how that might have helped you in it.
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think it is a mixture of all those. So let me go back. When I first began working in finance, one of the realizations I had to come to grips with was I looked really, really young and I had no gray hair. And so those were things that sort of work against you in finance. And an idea came to me one day, and I still don't know where it actually came, but it was an idea that I took action on. And it was, what if I reached out to the local TV stations and I said to them, when you need to talk about complex financial topics in an easy to understand way, call me. I'll be your resource for you. So I would get to the office about 6 a.m. back in the day when they had fax machines and it was all old school. But eventually my call came one day and they said, hey, we'd love to have you come on. We know you're regular. And I had never even been on TV before at all. It was just this aura that I was carrying that, hey, when you call me, I'll be ready to go. So the interview was booked. I practiced. And what I really did is I just visualized when I finish this interview, I want them to say to me, Derrick, you're made for TV, man. We would love to have you come back on. So the interview went great. The producer, just to this day, I still remember like it was yesterday. She said, Derrick, man, it's like you're made for TV. We'd love to have you be a regular on our show. And what that did was that launched my financial planning business because it gave me immediate credibility. And when people saw you in the media or on TV or they heard you on the radio, they felt like, man, this is somebody I could trust my money with. And so then taking your question and taking that part, first of all, then what happened really brought my eyes open. And that was, I always had a passion for education. I always enjoyed recognizing teachers and students. And I thought, when I was back in high school, wouldn't it have been cool to have like a business leader dude come and kind of breathe life into me and say, hey, man, you've got potential, you can do this, but nobody was there. So I thought I want to be that for the people in high school today. So I went back to my alma mater, Sam Houston High School, and I would give out like a $25 gift card or like a $50 gift card. I mean, nothing, but to these people, it was like winning the lottery. And what happened was, as word began to spread that I really enjoyed education and giving back, well, I began to get phone calls from prospective clients. And they would say to me, hey, Derrick, we'd love to have you invest our money, because we like how you give back to education. And that's something that we believe in. And if you believe in it, we think we'd work really well together. Well, that really blew my mind because these were people with, at the time, $500,000, $1 million. These were good sized accounts. And they're picking me because I like education. And it really blew my mind that, especially owning a business then, but I think even more so now, when you can tie in what I now call a generosity purpose, a cause you care deeply about, a wrong you want to right, an injustice you see in the world, and you use that to communicate to your customers and clients a way to differentiate yourself, people will want to work with you even more because you're part of something bigger. You're not just buying the computer or the software system or the stock or the bond. Yes, you're getting those things, but you're helping make the world better, and they'll pay more for it. It was fascinating when I made that discovery.
I'm so excited to hear about your passion for education because I'm actually a teacher by day. So it's cool to
great,
hear.
Great. Yeah,
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, so we'll get into your education, I'm sure, a little bit down the road. But I know you touched on this at the very start of the podcast about how you sold your company. So I know you had the company for over 2 decades. And so I'm just wondering, when you decided to sell and then you transferred that over into the good money framework where you're educating people how to do good with their money, did you not think that maybe that was something, you could keep the company and start the good money brand, or did you just, want to sell that and go all in on good money?
Yeah, no, that's the golden question you just asked right there. And believe me, it was something I wrestled with, but I think my answer will help you understand why I came to that eventuality. Whenever I would go on television, there was a compliance aspect to the national broker dealer that I was a part of. And so, for example, if Fox News would call or if CNBC would call, I would need to call my home office and say, look, they want to interview me. Here's what we're going to talk about. And what they wanted to do to protect the brand, which makes perfect sense, is they want to practice the script with me. We have to go over it and practice back and forth. And by the time we did all that, guess what happened? Well, the opportunity was gone. They'd already moved on to somebody else. And so what I realized was that if I really wanted to do more television, more media, write a book, launch a podcast, speak, coach, all those things, to have any ounce of integrity, financial services business, and to myself, it would require me to sell the business. Now, let me contrast that with what a lot of advisors will do. Many advisors that are 25 years, 30 years in the business, they will throttle back. They will work maybe 1 day a week. They'll bring in a team of people, and they're making good money, good recurring revenue, I might add. And they're just doing it, whatever else they want to do. They're living a semi-retired life. That was not what was in my heart. I'm still burning at full throttle, and I wanted to move this thing forward. So for me, it was worth selling the business, and I got a good price for it, sold it at a very good time. In hindsight, didn't know that at the moment, but it worked out really, really well. But it allowed me the flexibility financially to build something new, but also bet on myself. I mean, I tend to work best when my back's against the wall. There's a chapter in the book I write about Hernando Cortez. And the story goes that, he took his men to this island to get this treasure. And he told his men to burn the ships. And the men were incredulous, like, what are you talking about? He said, no. We're not leaving in our ships. We're going home in their ships. And that analogy for me is so powerful because sometimes I think all of us have a moment in our lives where we realize, what, I have to put my back against the wall to work myself out of this, or else I will simply not do it. And so that's what selling the business for me pushed me to do, was really be serious about launching this entirely new business.
That's awesome. So, you've told us a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got to where you are. So we're going to pivot a little bit and ask you some more just questions about money management, your framework and how you look at money. So the very first question I have is, your message seems to be that getting money in the hands of good people creates more good, and it kind of is a loop. that keeps going on and on. So can you kind of just tell us about that message, your overall money message, and how you came up with it?
Yeah, so most of what financial planning is right now is asking people, hey, what is your financial goal? And then most people reply back, I want to retire at a certain age. I want to do this. I want to pay down this debt. I want to go on this vacation. And all of that question answer is all about what does it get for me right now? In other words, how much money do I need to make or save to be able to achieve that goal? And what I find is the more research we dug into on this, especially with COVID, as people began to question, why am I working? Why is my job important? Am I making an impact? Am I really having the meaning I want in my little pocket of the world? What I realized was that people were going through the motions of just making money, which is not bad at all. But what if I could teach them and even empower them to go make money and go make more of it, and why they should make more of it, and then tie that to something that's really, really important to them? What would happen is they would be achieving all the same goals, but they'd be making more money and they'd be making a difference in the causes they care deeply about. And so what I thought about was that was the missing ingredient of adding fulfillment to people's money. When we were pairing in a business owner situation, profits and purpose, cash and a cause, money and meaning, all of those things coming together. And then what I wanted to do was really simplify it and just talk about, look, if you set 3 financial goals this year, you're going to be far more likely to achieve those 3 goals than if you set 10 or 15 crazy way out there goals, because it leads to frustration and disappointment, and you're not making the progress you want. So I wanted to make sure that people could lay their head on the pillow at night and feel like, man, I'm really making an impact here, especially the business owners listening. And I'm making more money as well. And I have a reason and a motivation why that's a good thing.
So I like how a big thing of the good money framework is the educating people why they should make money, make more of it, and then tie in that generosity purpose that you were talking about earlier. But if you were still in the mindset of just financial advisor before all the good money framework, what would you tell somebody one of the most important things that they can do with their money is, whether they have a little or they have a lot?
Yeah, I mean, Kyran, what I would tell people would be to follow the consumer trends. And what I mean by that is so many people want to make money way too complicated. And so how I think about money is like 4 lanes on a highway. If you're driving somewhere, that far right-hand lane, think of that as your checking account, your savings account, the slow lane. It's going to earn maybe 0.1%, but it's readily accessible. The money's there when you need it. Okay. But again, that's going to be where you drive really, really slow. The next lane is that 3 to 5 year lane. Maybe you're saving for the down payment on the house. You want to pay off an important credit card. You want to save for that trip of a lifetime. Maybe that money is earning 3 to 5%, a little bit faster than the far right-hand lane, but the money is accessible. This next lane is almost the fast lane, but it's not quite there. And this is where you're focused on retirement, the big blue chip companies, the technology companies. Maybe there's an annuity, a stock, a bond, real estate. This is where you're structuring that tailored financial strategy for your situation, but it's going to fluctuate. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. And then the far left-hand lane, I call that the fast lane, where you typically get the most tickets. That's where the most accidents occur. But think about here, your NFTs, your crypto, your metaverse, your alternative investments that half the time you wonder, now, how do these things really work? But you probably should put some money there. And so that's how I think about money right now, is 4 lanes on the highway. You want to have some money in each of the lanes, because it's kind of like when you go to the grocery store or you go, somewhere, the lane you're in Oftentimes another lane moves ahead and then you move back into that lane. You want to have a car in each of those lanes. And also I would say, as everybody gets older here, knowing your role, if you've got a significant other, a spouse, knowing who's good at the day-to-day, who's good at managing the long term. And that's where I go back to the generosity purpose is important. Why am I doing this? Because one thing we know about millennials, for example, is they want to know, why the heck am I working this hard? Why am I actually doing this? And if we can help them get a purpose for that, if we can help them tie in whether it's a generosity purpose or, look, I just want to make a lot of money so that then I can buy myself freedom at a certain age, that's a very powerful motivator for people. And what I would tell them is, look, if you think that whether it's going to be Apple or Facebook that owns the metaverse, well, buy both stocks. I mean, that's a trend that you could probably get behind and be okay, probably either way. If you're looking at technology or you're looking at, the NFTs or the cryptos, and that's a space that I really enjoy, then all of those things you want to have money in to make sure that you're taking advantage of where the growth may be.
So I think that a lot of people are I think they fall into one of these two camps. Either they don't know how to manage money at all. They've never been taught. They don't have any experience with it, or they are scared of money, not necessarily like boogeyman scared, but just, I guess, nervous about handling money. So what kind of advice do you give to people who either have no experience handling money at all, or are scared to make, you talked about the slow lane, the lanes on the highway. They like to just stay in that first lane that's very slow. They're scared they're going to mess up. They don't know, what to do. What kind of advice do you give those people?
A couple things. I think it's important to take a step back and begin to find out, why do people think the way they do about money? And then what do they believe about money? Because sometimes if people are very, very fearful about making decisions or making any type of money move at all, oftentimes you can go back even to their childhood and they witnessed right before them that mom or dad were banging their fists on the table, or grandma, grandpa, and hey, if only we had more money, then we could be successful. Money is for the people that are the haves and we're the have-nots. And there's this mentality that I find many people grew up with, and it's clouded how they make money. And they begin to see themselves as really not worthy of making money and having quality things in life, and it just holds them back. But having said that, what I think is very, very important is to be very, very simple. And that is, what can you do to give yourself as much momentum over money as possible? I like to call it being the CEO of your dollars. And a simple way to think about this is, let's say you owned a company and you didn't tell your employees anything. You just let them do whatever they wanted to do. Well, over time, they'd probably start to show up late. They'd hang out in the break room. They'd goof off. But oftentimes with our money, we're allowing that same mentality to occur. In other words, when we get money in, we're always putting ourselves in this precarious position of deciding, man, do I party with this or do I invest this? And it's always over and over again. That just wears on you, where suddenly there's more month left than there is money, and now you're in a hole. So I think simple things like set and forget, where you say, look, I'm going to invest 10% of my income automatically, and it's going to automatically go to my 401k or to my IRA or to my debt savings fund or to my cash account. That way, when the money comes in, it's already been told, here's where you're going, and here's what I expect of you. I think that's very, very important. Another thing that I would do, and this is a game that people can play, I like to call it being a dollar detective, and that is, what you can do is capture and keep. So right now, I get calls all the time from DirecTV or AT&T and my cable providers, and they're all looking to give me a proactive deal. In the book I talk about, you want to call these commoditized providers. Let's say it's your, rent insurance, your homeowner's insurance, automobile insurance. In Texas, we can pick our electricity provider, your cable provider, all those companies that you can really get from almost anywhere. You want to call and say, look, I'm considering changing. Do you have any kind of new customer specials? Any deals you've got to keep me as a customer? And often, more times than not, a savings deal arrives. And they, well, we can save you $100 a month if you bundle this, or $1,000 a year if you do this or that. The problem, though, is most people take that savings and what do they do with it? They spend it. Then you've got the new truck in the parking lot and the new computer and the new VR glasses. And my contention is we want to capture it, then we want to keep it. And that's how you really move that lever, one of those good money levers, I call them, where now you're actually saving quite a bit. I mean, I paid off my house about 5 years early by just capturing those dollars and putting them automatically to my mortgage. Now, could I have made more money? I had about a 2% interest rate. It was just for fun. Heck, I just wanted to pay the doggone thing off. But I think a lot of people can do the same thing, is just take the savings and put it toward their biggest financial pain point that they've got. Could be student loans, could be medical debt, it could be a credit card bill that really bothers them. That way they have something to show for what they've done. But the key is to keep it simple, where you're not having to make the decision every single time of whether to spend it or to save it.
Rolling off of a lot of the points you just made. So not necessarily, I know that question kind of started off as people who don't know how to manage their money at all, what would you recommend they do? And you mentioned student loans too. So that's kind of where I want to roll into. Like me as a college student, now I'm not going to say I have zero idea how to manage money, invest, and all that. But from where I'm at, what would you personally recommend to me? Like, where should I invest my money as a younger person, whether it be in IRAs or stocks, bonds? Should I just put things into savings to help pay off student loans, or how would you attack that?
Yeah. I mean, I think I would ask a couple questions. I mean, one would be, I mean, are you working right now? Do you have income right now? And so based on that level of income, that then would lead me down these next paths. I mean, at this point, I think liquidity is a real advantage. And, does it make sense to tie everything up? Probably not, but to put some money into a Roth IRA where we know all the gains on that grow completely tax-free. I mean, that's really cool, but also just what's called a non-qualified brokerage account, just an account that you can set up through Ameritrade or Schwab or Fidelity or, any app on your phone probably. And what that allows you to do then is buy stocks or buy crypto or buy even little pieces of real estate assets without having to own the real estate, where you're building a diversified portfolio. And what I think about is the game of how do I grow my net worth? I mean, that would be the game that I would be playing every single day. And that's the game that I play right now. I call it the report card for adults, is how can you build up that pocket of appreciating assets and shrink down the pocket of depreciating assets so that you've got a positive net worth. And one book, and this is a book, there's really two books I like to read every year. Soon it'll be my own next year when my book comes out. But until that time, The Richest Man in Babylon by a guy named George Clason. And he talks about financial principles sent back in like ancient Babylonian times. So it's a tale, but it's so good and people can really connect to the principles of saving and spending. But also there's a book by a guy named T. Harv Eker. He wrote a book called The Millionaire Mind. And he contrasts, it's almost a contrast like a Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but it just talks about how to make money, how to save it in real practical terms. And that's what I would be thinking about right now. It's one thing, I interviewed a guy on my podcast, Morgan Housel, and he talked about how money is really the one tool that people have that everybody has an equal chance of making money. You don't have to get your medical degree. You don't have to get a law degree. You don't have to have any specialized degrees. There's tools out there that, heck, if you just bought the S&P 500 index, for example, odds are that would probably meet or beat what the market may do year over year on a 10-year basis. And so that's what I would tell you I think but I don't want to call you a student because you're an entrepreneur. I mean, you have, maybe you're a student, but I mean, you have an entrepreneurial mindset. And that's where I think people should be right now, is not just being the receiver of money. I just want to give my paycheck. I really want to help people to be the creator of money. You know, everybody is one global event from losing their job. We've learned that in COVID. And I want people to have a side gig or a side hustle, or whatever happens, at least they're in control of some part of their income. And that's empowering and powerful.
So you touched on this just a little bit, and we'll talk about your book in a little while too, which I think kind of goes into the question that I'm about to ask. But do you have any particular resources or apps or websites or anything that you would recommend to anybody? Just, anything money, I guess, that you like to use or you'd recommend to somebody?
Well, there's so many resources. I mean, YouTube is such a great collection. And what I like to do is follow people on Instagram. I mean, I think Instagram is a great teaching, whether you're talking about, a friend of mine like Dan Fleischman, you're talking about Ed Milet, Peter Shankman. There's people that, you tend to connect with as you are going through your feed. Ryan Pineda, who does a lot of house flipping. These are people who you begin to almost develop a camaraderie with, even though you just meet them online and you develop that relationship. Or different podcasts, whether it's Donald Miller's podcast or Brian Buffini's podcasts, or, all of those I just view as vital. The temptation is always going to be to just camp there and watch TV or do this or that, but there's so much resource out there. That's where I think the money is really, really made right now. And that's something that I try to discipline myself, is to be a student all the time, because we all have the same number of hours. We all have, many of the same expectations, but for some reason, there are certain people in the world that just tend to get a whole lot more done than others. And I really feel it's those people who are consistently betting on themselves and investing back in themselves that are really distancing themselves from their peer group.
All right. So we've talked a lot about the financial advising now, not as much about the good money framework now. So I just want to know, when did your brand of good money take off? Because, you've been on Fox, CNN, MSNBC. I'm sure you've been on other podcasts and stuff. So about what time, if you had to guess, would you say that the good money really started taking off?
Yeah, right about 3 years ago, right before I sold the financial planning practice, I had been doing television and been helping take complex topics and making them easy to understand for a while. What I began to realize, though, was that for many people, COVID was this giant reset button. And I saw it kind of generationally. I see people who are in their 50s that are thinking about, man, when is retirement and what does that look like for me? And then I saw people, kind of 30 to 50 that were sort of figuring it out, that they were competing, though, with people coming back into the workforce that were older than them, but maybe weren't as adept with technology. And then I saw this group of people who were either in college still or had just left college and going into the workforce. And what they really wanted was, they wanted a culture that really made sense for them. They wanted to feel important and validated and feel like, hey, does the work I'm doing really matter? Am I really making a difference in people's lives? So that's where the good money framework came out of. That was not just helping people, because I've always enjoyed helping people make money. I feel like I'm good at it. But what was that extra layer that we could connect with people's money of, hey, not just doing all this just to eventually die one day and have all this money, but what if you could make a difference in a cause you cared about while you were living every single day? And what if that could be the motivator for you to actually ask your boss for more money, or get a degree or a certification or some type of licensing where you could then have more value on yourself and you could live a better quality life while at the same time making the world better. So all of those things kind of began to layer for me. It was sort of like I was in a dark room and a light just began to illuminate. And I realized, man, this good money framework, I think, really has the potential to give people more than just the, hey, go save a lot of money, but really put meaning and money together and pair them really nicely, like a nice red wine and a steak.
Aaron and I both have listened to several episodes of your podcast. I know he's got a few favorite guests. This question's kind of off the cuff, but one of my favorite people that that I don't know that I listen to often is Bob Goff.
Yes.
And I saw that you had him on there. So talk about having him on there. What was that like? And do you know him at all, or was it just a cool guest that you had on?
Yeah, so I know Bob, and Bob actually hosts an event called Dream Big in Nashville. And so I sent my family to the Dream Big event with Bob. And the purpose of that was he has a really good ability to help extract potential out of people. And he was able to just help talk through with my wife and daughters, hey, what are some of the goals that they had? And I remember vividly, it's funny you say Bob, because one of the things he said on my podcast was, he said, Derrick, if you want to begin to make the world better, start by walking across the street. And you might have remembered when he said that. And basically his point was, so many people think I've got to have a whole lot of money or a whole lot of influence, or I've really got to have my act together. All he was saying was, just simply start with the needs around you. Maybe it's a neighbor that lost their job. Maybe it's a son or daughter of one of your children who needs a helping hand. Maybe it's just helping out at the food bank locally, all those things. But then he also mentioned, you might have remembered at the very end of the podcast, he talked about when he would go to like a fine restaurant, the sommelier, when they would adjust all the wine bottles, they would go and they would give each bottle a quarter twist. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a full twist. As he joked on the podcast, he said, Derrick, one person said, Derrick, I'm going to do a full 360. He said, you do that, you're going to be exactly back where you started. And that doesn't get you anywhere. So he talked about that quarter twist. And he said, so much in our lives, we just need a quarter twist. We just need a little twist, and that makes all the difference in terms of how we see things. And so that was a podcast where it has stuck with me, and I think it's made me a better guest to this day.
Speaking to the same thing about guests and stuff, this one kind of blew my mind, when we were doing pre-podcast stuff, and, I'm looking you up and figuring stuff out, that you had Matthew McConaughey on.
Yeah, he was cool. Yeah.
And so I know I've seen like him through like Acorns ads and stuff. So I guess he's into the finance world a little bit, but just talk about that, because I think that's pretty crazy and pretty cool that you were able to talk to him.
Yeah. So McConaughey, he was one of those guys. He's so eclectic. He's so iconic, but he made you feel so important. And I remember to this day, I was one of probably 5 or 6 other interviews he had that day. And in his world, I'm kind of a little grain of sand. I mean, let's be honest about it,
Like we are to yours.
Well, no, I don't know about that. But he made you feel so valued and so important. And so as we're talking, he goes into this conversation about, he calls it soul's account and bank account. And he talked about how, Derrick, I could have all the money in the world. I could have all these great roles, all these great parts, and my bank account is completely full, but I could be so empty and lonely because my soul's account is totally in the debit section. And when he said that, it was so practical and so real, because this was a guy that had faced really redefining his role in Hollywood. He was, as he calls himself, he was the shirtless guy on the beach doing all the go-to beach roles, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but he wanted to take on more serious roles. And he began to tell people no, and it cost him financially. But what he learned was that by unbranding himself, he was able to rebrand himself. And it allowed him to then make more money, but also fill up that soul's account that was so important to him. So it was a really good conversation. That's one that I think about almost on a daily basis as well.
So we'll wrap up in a little bit, but a couple more questions. My first one is, I want to go back a little bit. And you talked about that how important it is for people to have an entrepreneurial spirit. And I've done a lot of different side hustles over the years. I'm in and out of several different things. We started a podcast recently. We're doing all kinds of different things, and I've done other things to make money on the side too. And I always feel and I have a very purposeful job, I feel like, in education, but
Yes.
there's an entirely different kind of purpose and feeling when I've started a side hustle and I'm doing it, and I'm going to make my own money and do my own thing. How important do you think it is for people to be entrepreneurs and to go out and try to start their own thing, and at least try, to start a business or start something that's meaningful to them, and just kind of talk about that for a minute?
Well, I think it's very, very important. And here's why. And your listeners may like this, they may not. I may hit a couple nerves here, but one of the things that I believe is that whatever a person is getting paid right now is what someone is telling them they are worth right now. Now that really sucks when you take a step back and you just process that, because what that means is I'm saying that what a teacher makes, could it be far less valuable than what an athlete makes? Well, that stinks. But that's what the economy is placing dollar bills. People accuse athletes of making so much money. Well, the bottom line is they're getting people into the stadiums, they're getting them to buy merch, concessions, all those things. You could be the greatest teacher in the world and the one that every parent wants their kid to have, but you're probably going to be hard pressed to bang on your principal's door and demand a raise, because there's a salary structure that teachers have, just like cops and firefighters, and there's this whole group of people. And so what I find unfortunate is, teachers, they put in the 40, but that just gets them in the door. Now they're grading papers to the 50, and they're talking to parents and the kids to the 60. And now they're faced with, man, do I want to keep doing this? Or do I do the side hustle or the side gig? And so I think right now it's vital for people, but I think they want to keep it simple. And my advice to people is, I get asked all the time, Derrick, what side hustle should I do? And I said, ask yourself this: what are routine questions that people typically ask you to help them solve? That begins to be the foundation of your side hustle. For example, as a teacher, I love the teaching field because there's so much opportunity, but I think about a seasoned, experienced teacher can provide so much value to the newbie teacher. Classroom management, how to talk to parents, how to teach difficult topics. Well, suddenly those can be teaching materials that can be sold. They can be talked about at the teacher conference. They can be generated into a recurring revenue stream if somebody wants to stay there. Or one thing that I know for sure is that parents will always pay to have their kids do better in school and athletically. It's guaranteed. If you can tutor well, or you can teach a sport to a kid well, you're going to make money. Or if there's coaching, teaching, there's a variety of things out there. So long answer to the question is, I believe it's vital to have some lane where you own your income stream. I just think it's vital more than ever right now. And I think with our sharing economy, you think about Uber and Airbnb, all those companies have taught us, look, we want to have people work part-time. We reward that. And I think now could not be a better opportunity for people to take advantage of that.
So Derrick, you've been awesome. And Kieran has he has a friend that he goes to college with that's actually going into the financial field. So he has a couple of, we'll call them guest questions after this.
Okay.
But before we get there, I just want you to give the best, most awesome plug that you can for your podcast, your book that comes out very soon, correct? And then, and just kind of tell us what you got going on.
Yeah. So the book is really the main focus right now, you can go to goodmoneyrevolutionbook.com, goodmoneyrevolutionbook.com. And part of that website is I've created 2 bonus videos. The book retails for like $20. Easily those videos are about 10 times the value of that, but I wanted to give people value even before they bought the book. The book comes out February 22nd. And so we've set a lofty goal of 10,000 pre-orders by February 22nd. So it comes out 2/22/22, which is kind of cool. But I just want this book to be in the hands of so many people to empower them to make more money and do more good. And the other ways to catch us is on Instagram at Derrick T. Kinney, also at goodmoneyframework.com. But the podcast is the Good Money Podcast. And the whole gist of that is to help people grow their net worth so they can use it for good. And it's so fun to bring on quality people and really just talk about money. I would not have guessed that McConaughey would have gone as deep as he did into how he felt about money, or even Bob Goff. And all these things, I think, help us make better money decisions, better money moves. But again, would love to have this book in as many hands as possible. So goodmoneyrevolutionbook.com.
Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing all the stuff about your podcast and your book. Hopefully the people we do reach will look into those and they'll give you a listen, read your book. I know I'll get your book. I'll read it. I'll continue to listen to your podcast and support you like you supported us by coming on. But before we wrap up here, I do have a couple of questions. Shout out Javier that he gave to me because because personally, I don't know much about finance and financial advising, and I know he's going to school to be a financial advisor. So I asked him, I said, what are some questions you would ask? Because, you're you've been a big time financial advisor, Forbes Top 10 list. And so I was like, what is something that, we should ask? And so I think this is geared more towards people who are looking to go that same route, being a financial advisor. So the 2 big questions he asked me is, what's the best way to build a clientele or book business? And what resources do you recommend to become more knowledgeable in, books, websites, anything like that?
Well, what I would say to someone starting off in the field right now, you've got to look at the reality of the landscape. And that is, most companies are not wanting to hire a novice financial advisor. In other words, that's just the economy right now. And so what I would encourage him to do would be to go work at an existing firm. And the purpose there would be, even as an assistant, as a part-time person, not getting paid very much. But the bottom line is, you can learn more by being in the arena than by simply learning in the classroom. Mark Randolph, who was the co-founder of Netflix, really harped on me hard on that. He said, Derrick, where are you going to make more money, going to school or actually working for the company that's doing what you're learning about in school? And his point was so well taken. So, right now, where I think your friend has an opportunity, though, is as millennials, as people who are just graduating college, almost 75% of them have some sort of crypto in a wallet or a portfolio that they're holding. And so to have knowledge of that technology, the NFTs and Meta, all those things, I think can be really, really valuable to an existing firm. But how I would position this would be, is you want to go to the advisor, the owner of that particular firm, and say, look, I want to help you build capacity. I want you to teach me how to work with some of the lower asset clients so that you then can free up your timetable to work with higher asset clients. Then it's going to be a rich field of learning for your friend to work with this younger set of people and really hone his or her skills.
Awesome, Derrick. So we'll wrap it up with that. I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about finance, good money. I know Trey and I both will continue to support you, following, keeping up with the podcast, reading the book. And so we are really appreciative of the time you've given us. And so with that, we will wrap up this episode of Victory Monday. Like, subscribe, rate 5 stars, all the good stuff. Go follow Derrick. We'll plug his stuff in the description. and we will see you next week.